Hi, I'm Anthony from Sydney Backyard Veggies. We're smack bang in the middle of winter at the moment, and my veggie patch is just all about cool season crops, from my Brussels sprouts to my broccolis to my cauliflowers and to all my leafy greens. But now is the time for me to start planting my spring garden, and today I'm going to be starting my first round of seedlings for spring, my capsicums, my eggplants and my jalapenos. And I'm going to show you what varieties I'm going to be growing this year. I like to start my capsicums and eggplant seedlings at this time because it does take a while for them to not only germinate but to grow to a size that I can plant them out in my garden. I like to get both my capsicums and my eggplants planted out at that first week of September. So to grow those seedlings out, I need to start now. Now, generally speaking, eggplants and capsicums take between 15 and 18 days to germinate and are very slow growing. I'll be potting them on at least once to grow them out to a size to get them planted out in the garden. For my capsicums, I'll be growing two varieties, a red bell variety and a yellow bell. For the red bell variety, I'll be growing Harley. Now, this Harley variety I've been growing for the last 2 years, and it does produce a very large red colored bell capsicum. Great producer, produces a lot of large ones, especially if you get it planted out early. In my last 2 seasons, I've been harvesting some good harvests of this variety. The yellow bell variety that I'll be growing this year is the same one I grew last year, Agostini. Now, Agostini produces quite a large yellow bell capsicum. Not as productive as I found as the Harley, but still it's very nice to get some yellow color in your salads and in your dishes. It is long growing, and I can harvest out pretty much all the way till March last season. With my eggplant varieties, I like planting the large standard glossy black variety of eggplants, and the variety I plant every year is Monasa, and I've been planting this for the last 3 years. It actually produces a really large piece of fruit that's not full of seeds. I find that this one's got very little seeds in it, as long as you keep the water up to the fruit, and it produces for a long period of time. This again will produce from November all the way to end of April. To start out my seedlings, I've been using 8 cell punnets, and I've been filling them up with store-bought seed raising mix. I've slightly moistened the soil, and with 1 seed per cell, I've planted out all those seeds, and then I've covered it with a light layer of vermiculite, which I find works well in my context. I find that the seeds germinate a lot better. And now that they've been planted out, I'm going to be putting them on a couple of heat mats for them to germinate, and I'll show you that setup and how I've got that going. I germinate my seeds indoors in a north facing room, and I do use heat pads this early in the season, and I find this works best to actually get the seeds to go along. Both the eggplants and the capsicums do need a fair bit of heat to germinate. Now, I got these from my local hardware store, but any variety of heat pad would do. Now, for the tray itself, I've got this, if you can just see that, there's a plastic tray underneath which the punnets sit within, and that just provides a medium for the punnets to sit in, and so you don't have punnets going everywhere. I just leave it here in this corner, and they will germinate in that 15 to 18 day period. And once they've germinated, I'll start putting them outside in the sun. Then make sure they don't get leggy. The key is to get them out in the sun early so they don't get leggy. And I'll show you how I do that as they come closer to germinating. But this is now ready to go. And I will look at, when I come to germinate my tomatoes in about 2 weeks' time, have a second tray sitting on this mat here. Now, in my context, it's just a little bit early for me to start growing my tomato seedlings. I find tomato seedlings germinate a lot quicker than the capsicums and the eggplants, so they can wait till the start of July before I germinate them. And now the idea there is that I want to get tomatoes planted out by mid-August. I don't get frost in Sydney, so I'm happy to take the punt and plant them out early. So in 2 weeks' time, I'll show you the varieties I will be growing and how I'm going to be starting those ones as well. Now that I've started my spring seedlings, I have to start planning where I'm going to plant these plants in my beds. Now, in my main bed here, I need to start clearing out some space for these seedlings. then it's going to be planting them out in about 6 weeks time, so I can't look at planting anything long term that needs more than 6 weeks to grow. So I'm planning on using the back half of this patch here to plant out my tomatoes. One box that were planted here previously are almost completely harvested, and these sugar snap peas, I'm going to be starting ripping them out soon. The broccoli is also almost ready to be cleared. As you can see, a few heads, and these will be ready to harvest next week. So this whole section of bed will be cleared to plant tomatoes. 2 rows here and another 2 rows in this spot here. Now that I've decided this is where my tomatoes are going to go, I'm going to quarantine this area and only grow fast growing crops in this space. So over the next four weeks, I'll be growing pak choy, kailan, I'll be growing radishes, and maybe fast growing lettuce. I may grow one batch of broccoli adjacent to the mango. I do find that broccoli do grow pretty fast as the days get longer. Now in terms of my eggplant and my capsicum, the plan is that I'll be planting them in this front section here. As a recap, I've got my second planting of cauliflower in the front section here. I have my Brussels sprouts planted adjacent to them, and I've got a couple of rows of cabbage here, which you can just see are just starting to form their heads. And I've got my third planting of broccoli, some spinach, and a few peas and lettuce in the back. Now, based on the stages that these plants are at, and expecting that the garden is going to grow a lot faster as we start moving in towards spring, I'm expecting as a minimum I would have harvested all those cauliflowers and definitely the broccolis, and potentially started working through my cabbages. So then I'll be able to start opening up space in this front part of the patch here to plant my eggplants and my capsicums. Now I need the capsicums to be planted together because I do like to net for fruit flies. So I am thinking of having my capsicums planted in these 2 locations here, 2 rows of capsicums side by side there, and my eggplants will be planted in this spot here where the cauliflowers will be finished in about that 6 to 8 weeks time. So once they move on, that space will be made available. For me, when I'm planning my gardens, I'm always thinking 6 to 8 weeks ahead as to what I'm going to be planting, and based on what the season will be doing at that time, planting my seedlings to suit. Now, although we are in the middle of June at the moment, in 6 weeks time we'll be coming into the start of August, and then we're almost starting to push into spring. So from now on, I don't tend to plant any long season winter crops. I may get one last crop in of cabbages, but generally speaking, my last planting of cauliflowers will go in about 2 weeks time, and that's the extent of the long season crops. I am now planning for spring, so everything I do in my garden now revolves around what I'm going to be planting at spring. So with the plans for the tomatoes and the capsicums, I'm now looking at what I'm going to be planting at the front of my patch over here, and my plan here is to be planting out my first planting of corn, sweet corn, in this front patch. I'm planning to remove a lot of these crops at the front here in that early to mid-September time, just in time for me to direct seed sweet corn. I find sweet corn does better when it's direct seeded, although I do grow a lot of seedlings. But if you want to direct seed sweet corn, it has to be in that late September weight. Last week of September, I just find the soil's too cold. Otherwise, going to be also planting a lot of beans this year, and I'll be looking at planting a lot of my beans in the back area. If you can just see that, in the back area behind the mango tree, and also come across the front here in front of the avocado tree. I find that area is now starting to get a lot more sun, and so that'll be perfect. So that's my spring plans, and although we're in a smack bang still in the middle of winter, I am really looking forward to a little bit of warmer weather, longer periods out in the garden, and being able to get some of those more summer veggies in the patch. But for now, still going to enjoy my winter crops, trying to get a lot more of those fast growing turnover crops in the ground in time, so that I can get them out in time for my spring plantings coming up in the middle half of August. Moving on into my patch, and over in my main bed, it's time for me to start harvesting my kailan, my Chinese broccoli. And I planted this out a few videos ago, and I planted out pretty much 2 rows of plants, and as you can just see here, they're looking amazing. They've grown really fast over the last few weeks. I've added a lot of fertilizer to the soil before planting them out, and now, yeah, they're doing great. They're in this full sunny spot and they're just growing amazingly. Just looking at them at the moment, and I can show you what I'm looking for when I'm seeing if they're ready to harvest. And as you can just see, the floret is just starting to form up on these plants, and the idea is that you just harvest the whole plant whole. What I'll be doing though is actually, when I'm harvesting, I'll be harvesting just to above one of the leaves, and what that does is it encourages the plants to push out a second crop, and at that node the plants will produce a second crop in about 2 to 3 weeks time. I'm looking at harvesting at least the left row at the moment. The right row is still quite small, and that could be doing just a bit less sun than what's on the left, although I will be looking at harvesting plants where you can see that the florets have formed. And likewise, when you let them grow a bit longer, you can just see they actually start forming flowers. Now this is still quite edible, but you don't want it to get as big as this, because they will start getting a bit stringy. To know when your kailan is ready to harvest, you look for the green floret that opens up just at the top there, and so these are ready to harvest. What I'll be looking at doing is just harvesting to one of the leaves, and I'm just going to be harvesting to this leaf here, and you'll find that the next growth will come out from this spot. There's actually a little node there, so just using my scissors, harvesting that, and that's perfect. Very clean, actually. These are very clean plants, and you can just see just a little bit of insect damage, but nothing to fret about. And I'll harvest the second one. And there you go. 2 beautiful plants. I'm going to put these in a container of cold water just to get that heat off them, and I'll continue harvesting the rest. I planted these seedlings at that 40 centimeters apart between the rows, and you can actually plant these plants quite dense. I'm finding that even the ones that are planted 2 per spot are producing quite well, but generally speaking I like to give them at least 20 centimeter spacings, and I am working on trying to plant them a bit tighter just to see if I can increase the overall productivity in that location. As with all brassicas, kailan really likes having a lot of nitrogen, so blood and bone in the bed before you plant them out, but also a lot of liquid fertilizer throughout the growing season. I've applied 2 doses of liquid fertilizer over the last 5 weeks, and the results speak for themselves. So don't be afraid to give them more fertilizer than less. With Chinese broccoli, you do get a lot of damage from cabbage butterfly larvae and the like, so I do treat these with pyrethrum. In my context, you can net. I find pyrethrum works well in my context. I like to especially spray as soon as I see any damage forming up on the plants. As the weather does get cooler, you do find that the pest pressure does drop off, so it's really in that late autumn and early spring times that you'll have most of the problems when it comes to pest pressure. And I generally plant kailan in between autumn and spring. So my first planting went out in early February. This is actually my second planting, which went in about 5-6 weeks ago, it took me up to April, and I will be planting one more round in the next few weeks as soon as I get a bit of spots. The good thing about this crop is, if you don't want to wait for the second and third flushes, you can harvest that first crop, pull them out, and that way you can get the space free to plant other veggies. This is what I might do now that I've already started my spring seedlings. I may just put a quick last minute crop in, harvest that once, and then move them on for my spring garden. Finished harvesting that crop. Beautiful plants. They're actually starting just to start to wilt a bit in the sun now. I need to get a little bit more water on these. On the plant inside. I harvested most of them. So what I did was I left these smaller ones here at the front just so that they can grow for another few days. Then I'll harvest them. I'm going to be applying a bit of fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, to really get them going now that they're at their harvest stage. Giving them a bit of fertilizer now really helps. I have interplanted some coriander, which I'm hoping that it will really come across. I'm going to harvest these as a bunch, so I've planted them in little bunches like this, but I'll be coming to get rid of all these chickweeds, clearing out all the space, giving them a little bit of fertilizer, keeping the water up to them. It's very important too, and hopefully should be harvesting these in that 2 weeks time. And before I wrap this video, I just want to give you an update on my Brussels sprouts. And just as a recap, planted these Brussels sprouts in early March, and you know, they've been doing okay. I've got 6 in the spot, and these are just your store-bought, standard store-bought varieties, so I'm not sure what the variety is. But if you look at these at the moment, you can just see the little buds for the broccoli starting to form up, which is a sure sign that I'm ready to harvest in about 6 weeks time. The key I find with Brussels sprouts is they need to start early. I did plant these out in March. I should have planted them out in February, so I'm finding that 4 week delay in planting may have impacted when these will produce. Ideally you want the sprouts to produce in the cold, so in August rather than September, so they can get large and stay quite tight. Another thing I'm going to do now is actually come and heal the soil around the plants. As you can see, the plants are just starting to lean a little bit, and so I'm going to put a bit of soil up and support them, and I will give them one more application of dynamic lifter pellets, but I don't want to give them any more after that. This is my last application of fertilizer. I do, again, in my experience, if you fertilize too late in the production of the Brussels sprouts, I find that you will end up having Brussels sprouts that split. So to keep those tight sprouts, you don't want to overdo the fertilizer too late in the season. But besides that, looking okay. There is a little bit of a disease going through on the lower leaves, but that's not to worry about. I had some aphid problems earlier on. Just a few sprays of white oil or pyrethrum will fix them up, but you want to stay on top of those because they will set your plants back. But looking forward to harvesting Brussels sprouts. Family don't really like to eat them, but they're fun to grow. So I will be harvesting these in that early September, and looking forward to showing everyone my results. Thank you very much everyone for joining me in this video. I really appreciate all the support. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on a comment on this video, or better still on my socials via TikTok or Instagram. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.